Well, listen, man. You know, I've always found you to be one of the most congenial, friendly guys in our business.
Oh, I appreciate that, man.
Um,
Appreciate that
well,
a lot.
it's just, and there's like a club of you guys. Like I don't
Yeah.
consider myself one of those because I'm a little bit too hot for TV sometimes. But man, I just you've always been to my mind one of the real true gentlemen of this business.
All right.
And
Thank you.
we're going to get to a relationship that you have with a young a singer. Is a singer, yes, or is it
Yeah.
just
Mhm.
a
Yeah.
regular muggle? Is there a
Yeah.
singer?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. He's a singer. Yeah.
yeah. So we're going to get to that in a second. But I heard a story about an experience that you had in Seattle. That before we go on,
Yeah.
I want to talk about that because
Hmm.
the the quick, is about those connections. The
Hmm.
show. It's about
Yeah.
the emotional connections that we make, and
Yeah.
those things take all kinds of different forms.
Right.
And
Right.
this is one of them. One of those connections that when you're as an artist is up on the stage, and your art and your talent, and your energy is reaching out across, and it just kind of
Mhm.
grabs somebody. And you know,
Yeah.
we all know being in this business, a lot of folks sometimes they get nervous to come up to talk to people that they've just seen perform, this heartbreaking work. So it
Right.
takes a lot, of uh, inertia. It's a lot of inertia
Hmm.
they have to overcome in order to come to you. So when people actually do come to you and want to express something to you, it really means
Right.
that you've moved them. So could you tell
Yeah.
us about this experience and what
Yeah.
that sort of what
Y-
that took?
yeah. So I was at Seattle Opera. I think it was 2017. It was. I was doing Barber Seville. I was singing Figaro. And this was I think the final. It was the final dress rehearsal we had. And I did the performance, or I did the dress, and the stage managers are coming back to me after the performance, and they said, "Will, there's two people that want to see you. So once you get changed, head on to the backstage entrance and greet them." And to me, I didn't know anyone in Seattle, or minus the cast or anyone there. So I was like, okay, I didn't invite anybody to the dress, so got out of costume and went backstage, and there's these two people there, and this lady was waiting for me there for the bouquet of flowers. And I think the other person was a close friend of hers. And then she goes on to say, I haven't been to the opera since 2001. And I had a brother who was an opera singer. I can't remember if he was a professional or was like, amateur or whatever, but he started his career in opera before he switched into something else. But he started in opera, and she said, I haven't been to the opera since my brother passed away. And turns out she said that he had died in the September 11th terrorist attacks. And ever since that day, she couldn't, bring herself to come to the opera because it reminded her of her brother. So, fast forward, 60 years, and, she decided, I think her friend convinced her to go check out the show. The Barber of Seville is in town at Seattle Opera. And I think she was saying, if you don't like it, we could just, head out, but she encouraged her to come to the performance. And so she went, and she ended up saying that, my performance and, the acting, me doing my thing really touched her and, brought joy to her day. And she ended up handing me the flowers and said, thank you. Now I can close this chapter in my life and move on. And she walked out. And I wish to God, it happened so fast. It was just so like kind of hitting it, a brick wall with this thing that she told me, and just how that whole story unfolded. And she handed me the flowers, and man, it just sort of kind of was a huge reminder of like why we do this, and
Yeah.
just the magnitude of just how our performances, what we're giving and offering, the stories we tell, reach so many people. And most of the time we're never going to know who we might end up touching. She just happened to come back and greet me, but she didn't have to. She could have just like, I really enjoyed that, and like I would have never known. But like, it's just a reminder, man, like what we do is so powerful, and you never know who you could be reaching and touching, and like whether it was a comedy too. It's not like any heartbreaking stuff. You're like,
that was the point I was going to make, man, because like, I do a lot of emo. My niece Stormy has started calling what I do emo opera.
Yeah.
She's like, Uncle Mike, your opera's so emo all the time. And you would kind of expect that when I walk off for Dead Man Walking or Everest or one of those pieces, I walked off of Everest once and had 2 suicide support people that had met each other at a suicide support group come up and talk about how, how Everest had sort of, it really felt like it was speaking to them, and they came up, and it's the same sort of situation. But that's something you expect from a piece like that.
Yeah, right.
But from Barbara Seville, you're not expecting someone to be like, "Oh my God, I was so moved."
Yeah, exactly. So that's what, like Flowers. What I don't understand what was happening, and it's just that she just had that connection to her. And I think I forgot to mention that her brother used to sing. He would sing he sang the role of Figaro, and that was her favorite thing, that she listened to him, that she wanted to hear him sing. And I think that really did it for her, and she decided to come. And man, I brought tears to my eyes, and it was so moving, and just a great reminder of why we do this.
Yeah, I was funny, like, doing this show, I started out with a loose concept, of what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I've really, the whole show is about the connections we make with other people.
Yeah.
And how we can reach out and with our art or with each other and make these kind of connections.
Yeah. Yeah.
And isn't it funny, like how something like Barbara Seville, which is, people kind of look at that as a diversion. Let's go out and see that tonight. But for this piece had a particular emotional impact for this particular person that none of us could have known.
Right.
And for me, when you have one of those experiences and you walk away and you go, that's why I do it. Oh, that's the quick. It's right in there.
Yeah.
That's what brings me back. I can't stop.
Right.
This show and what we're talking about here and these experiences, these are the things that make us go, it's worth it to sacrifice this, or it's worth it to spend these 6 weeks on the road away from my family, away from my partner.
Yeah.
This is the thing that makes us give up stuff so we can be in this.
Yeah.
And if we could bottle that and give it to other people, that'd be great, wouldn't it?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, in that moment, I was just so grateful and thankful that, I get a chance to do this and just, be that vessel for, someone who you never know what people are going through, and just, or the connections, like you said, that they may have to an aria or something in the story that's really impactful for them. Because I remember that day, I was like tired. It's like, final dress, here we go. Like, looking at all my notes, like, trying to make sure I'm hitting my cues and not even focused on what I'm, presenting to the, I'm just trying to get my staging and all this stuff. And like, that was the last thing I expected was something like that happen. So,
we're sort of in the goal setting business. We're always learning new music and trying to get our notes correct and all that stuff.
Yeah. Right.
And and it's nice to be reminded sometimes, but that we were doing the job, we didn't even know it. We were already there.
Yeah.
It wasn't about the closed vowel or the legato in that moment. It was about the experience with her. So
right.
Man.
Yeah. And that was a great reminder of that. And like, I wish to God I remembered her name. I mean, she gave me the flowers and have a card just like she had these flowers. I wasn't sure if she had them beforehand, was going to give them out or whatever. But, that was something that was one of just the burn in my memory. And is something I always carry with me is like why we're on the road and why we do this and why it's important. And people need that. People need the arts. People, it's so imperative.
It's like I want to loop back to what we said before, that these pieces, like you think about a piece like As One or Out of Darkness or 3 Decembers, you expect to walk into there.
Yeah.
You expect to heal somebody because that's kind of what you're doing. with opera, because I always look at opera as a service, a community service. We're there to serve our community.
Yeah.
And I just think it's really great that,
yeah.
and I think it speaks to your power as a performer that you were able to reach somebody with Barbara Seville and really touch their lives and give them a healing experience.
No, thanks. Yeah. I mean, it was, it's something that, after that happened, I just went back to my dressing room and just sat there for like 5 minutes, just completely sort of just stunned and just, I don't know, kind of humbled by the whole thing. And man, it was in that moment, it made the whole, like, the performances were just easy after that. Like, it was just, I felt like I fulfilled my purpose of why I was in Seattle. Like, just hold it, like everything else was smooth sailing. Like, if I cracked the high G or did something dumb that, wasn't in the staging, like, didn't matter. Like, because that one person who, reached out to me afterwards and told me that story was moved, and, that really made that whole gig just so great. And
That's wonderful, man.
Yeah.
It makes me think, one of the things about this, when you receive that kind of energy from somebody, that kind of statement or that sort of laurel or praise, it's super humbling. It makes, and I like, the hardest part about this job for me was learning how to receive that stuff, because I was like, please, no, I'm terrible, I'm awful.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly.
Whatever you do, I'm awful. You don't even have any idea how many notes I missed.
Right.
That stuff.
Yeah.
And so I often feel like I get this, these people are laying this on me, and I feel like, for me, I always got to figure out this gratitude that they gave you. I'm like, I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
So I always feel like I got to pass it on.
Right.
And what's interesting to me is you and I were talking just over Messenger.
Yeah.
And you were telling me about how, and I think this is an example of that. You got all this gratitude. What are you going to do with it? How do you repurpose this into something that you think can give somebody?
Right. Yeah.
And you were telling me that you mentor some high school students from your own high school.
Yeah.
And so what I really wanted to do here is bring on Jermaine Woodard.
Jermaine
Jr. Jr. is very important. We want to make sure Daddy gets credit. And so with Jermaine here, we'll have a little back and forth there in a second. But Will, could you tell me about what it really is that drives you to do something like mentor people? Because I know that that working with you, we have with the Soloist Coalition, we have our young artist mentors, and it's a weird thing for us to go, well, let me tell you here, youngin.
Yeah, right.
Back in my day, we didn't even have young artist programs. You just had to find a fella that sang real good and just follow him around all day, and that's what you hear a lot of. So
exactly, yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about your experience as a mentor and what inspired you to just sort of do that, and how that relates to opera?
Yeah. Well, for me, it's about being a singer of color. It was important to me to be an advocate for diversity in the arts, because that's what got me into opera. Growing up and seeing people like Denise Graves and Lawrence Brownlee take the big stage, and seeing someone else who looked like me get up there and sing for all those people just inspire me and make me go like, man, I can do that, if they could do that. So it's important for me to use the platforms that I have now to, do that for the generation that's just directly behind me, and do what I can to mentor or, be an example. I try to make myself available for people, for people that, have questions about the business, and just, doing my part and trying to be an advocate the best I can. So
how did you there has to have been a moment at some point where you're like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go approach somebody about finding me a mentee.
Yeah.
Was there a moment that inspires you to do that? Or was it something that was accumulating over time and you were just like, no, I'm going to do this thing? And how did you go about asking people and finding a mentee. That's something I think a lot of folks are really interested in.
Yeah, I think for me, it was the Governor's School for the Arts that Jermaine and I both did, because it was a program that's out in Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia, and it's a high school program that, and they have different departments like musical theater, dance, and one of those departments is voice. And you learn at a high school level, like about opera. We go to operas, we put on operas. So that right there was like the beginning for me. And looking back on that, I always had a personal relationship and connection with Governor's School, and just sort of looking towards like the next, group of high schoolers coming through that program. And so I felt that was like a place where I really could, make a difference and have a really, deep connection with, and reach out to the people that were come through Governor's School after me.
So this is a place that's really close to your heart. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you knew, and I'm assuming that you sort of drew on your relationships that you had formed there when you were a student.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Jermaine.
Okay.
So Jermaine, if you don't mind me asking, I know this is a sensitive subject for some people. Not me. I'm 44. I don't care. I mean, who knows how old I am? How old are you? And how long have you been? Are you pursuing a career now, or what's your story, man?
Yeah, I am 26 years old, and I am from Portsmouth, Virginia. And I've been studying classically since I was 14 at the Governor's School for the Arts, actually. So it is a sensitive subject, because the Governor's School is literally my world, or it was my world for a specific amount of time. And then as I moved on, I would always reference to it. I'm literally in a conversation talking to someone about it right now as we speak. So, outside of this conversation, but
so you would say that this Governor's School, by nature of the way it's fostered your education, it's sort of, I mean, it seems like it inspires a lot of loyalty.
Yeah.
Would that be accurate?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You guys both, I mean, I like my high school, but man, I don't talk about it like y'all do. So it must be a pretty great place.
Talking about the gospel of Governor's School.
Hey, look, my grandfather was a preacher, and they always call me Pastor Mike. So I start talking about opera like I'm always trying to win over souls to the church of opera. So I get you.
Same. I was actually just looking up the Met season about 2 or 3 days ago, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't know this was happening. So, yeah, opera nerds.
So you started studying classical music in high school, which is pretty awesome, and at 14. And so at what point did Will Liverman come on the scene? When did that happen?
Oh my gosh. You're asking me to go way back. Okay.
Now listen, if you can't remember, we won't get mad, I'm sure, right, Will?
No, it's okay. That's all right.
It could be that Will's advice has been so ever present and so valuable. It just seems like it's always been there.
Well, the crazy thing is, there were like, there's like the 3 tenors. There was like the 3 black guys who made it, with like a 4th in there, sort of, kind of. So there was like the trio, Will, Freddie, and Ryan. And then the one that was kind of thrown in there is our other friend named Josh Conyers. So when they all would just come back and, tell their stories and help mentor us and just talk to us like we were normal people, it was always mind-blowing, to be quite honest with you, because at that time I was still new to everything. I mean, I was getting roles by way of, hierarchy or audition, but it was all still fresh. And to have these guys who I was getting familiar with at the time, that I just started calling brothers and be like, yo, hey, big brother, love you. And then they just they tell us about their collegiate journeys or their journeys onward into young artist programs. It was always just so sensationally mind-blowing, and to see them do it and do it so, I would say, especially in Will's case, so gracefully, it was always admirable. And for someone like me who knew opera was going to be a huge part of my life, but not sure how, because I always found myself a lot more, and this is gonna sound crazy, but a lot more akin to the Compromario life. Just like, I just want to travel.
That's definitely a hashtag, that Compromario life hashtag. That's it.
Exactly. And my professors were like, no, you're going to be this, and this. But I'm like, no, I'm cool, just chilling. Like, give me, this little part. And then like, no, you need to aim higher than that. And then, just going to the Met and seeing Speedo and the Rossini, Semiramide, and then seeing Will in freaking Magic Flute. Like,
Did he not kill in that, man?
Yo,
did he not kill in that?
I
God, he was so good.
My mind. I brought my best friend, and she was like, "That's your big brother," and I was like, "Yeah, that's it." Just like living my best life. It's amazing.
And no offense to anybody else on that stage, but anybody that does Magic Flute knows that this is the story. And I tell you what, as somebody who's done Papageno and knows how much work that is.
Yeah, right.
I was in such awe of Will and his characterization and his vulnerability and his sweetness and sincerity. It was all came through 100%. And I found myself, and I do this, I know when I'm watching a great performer, that when they leave the stage, I start getting antsy. I'm like, when's he coming back? Oh yeah, that's right. 2 numbers, and then Will comes back. So,
right.
Full disclosure, my wife, I'm not really ever sure if my wife loves me or Will more, but we were both just laughing our tails off. So we're all in the Will Liverman fan club, I'll tell you.
I love him.
Fair. He was absolutely extraordinary. I honestly don't remember the cast but him, which is saying something. And he was obviously my best friend's favorite. Yeah. She was just like, he hands down stole the show. Oh, Solomon Howard, but that's just because he's black. But like Will is like this extraordinary gift to the world, and we seriously, the audience, we gave him his flowers following the show, because literally the audience went crazy when he came out. He was just that phenomenal, and to see that,
I appreciate that,
in like full effect live, because I hadn't seen him. Oh my gosh, I don't know. Well, when was the last time I even saw you perform?
It may have been, I don't know, something, maybe Virginia Opera.
You know what? It was the recording of. See, now we're going into opera nerd territory. It was the live recording of Marnie. That's when I saw him on the stage. But live, I don't think it had been since Governor School, to be quite honest with you.
Right.
Which was over 10 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
So, Jermaine, how much of that applause do you think was for Will's incredible talent and grace, and just the way he, really embraces a character, and when you see him come out on stage, you get it, man. He's there.
Yeah.
And so there's all of that sort of beauty and grace, emotionally, and professionally, and with your talent. And then there's how good he looks in a green Speedo suit. Now, which one do you think?
I knew this was going somewhere. Man, that Speedo was the bane of my existence. I was trying to run, and every time I tried to pick up a breakfast bag, I'm like, green Speedo.
Green Speedo.
I gotta fit in it.
We can't wear a black Speedo. At least that's slim.
I did the best that I could at that point. I was just like, that was a moment in time.
Man, and I know we're all sad about, look, let's be frank about this coronavirus situation. Everybody knows what the story is with relation to that and how we all feel about it.
Yeah.
One thing I don't miss is trying to stay in shape all the time. Because I know I have time to get back.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Jermaine, can you take us back? I know that this relationship. How long have you guys had this relationship? About?
Probably since the beginning of my time there.
Yeah, I remember meeting Jermaine when you were starting out at Governor School.
I had to have been a freshman.
Yeah, since you were a freshman, I think.
We're going on 12 years.
Yeah, that's a long time, guys.
It is.
Well, can you tell me, Jermaine, can you just give me an example of something that sort of exemplifies the relationship you have with Will, and something that sort of tells me how much that this relationship means to both of you guys? Because I know that, you can't be in a relationship with anybody for 12 years without building some serious affection. That doesn't matter if it's a business relationship,
Yeah.
And this mentor-mentee thing it's so intimate as to almost be a relationship similar to a parent, but it's like a more like a cool uncle you can talk to. So can you go and dip into some of that for us and let me explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's always been like the primal brotherhood, like in the purest, most rawest sense. And especially considering we're never geographically in the same place at the same time. That like doesn't happen unless I'm at the Met and he's there, performing. But I don't recall the last time I saw him physically, but digitally and through social media platforms, he's always been, the brother figure in the artistic world and personally as well that I've needed, because in this business there's a lot of us, I guess, now, but it's still far few in between. So to see someone like him from the root of who I am, which is Governor School, make it to such a degree and still be incredibly humble as he is.
Yeah.
I mean, playing a piano at his mom's place and his mom singing with him and talking about her home cooking, like that's the type of life that I would think one wants to live, when you feel like you've made it at a certain point and you still remember the people that have been there. And he is like all of that and then some, meshed up with some extremely unreal talent.
Yeah.
And just watching him specifically at Flute, it felt surreal. Everything about it just felt surreal, and knowing where we both come from, which I don't know if he's talked about already, but Mr. Brown, who was like his person. I got Brown for like a year, and I mean, it wasn't fair because I felt like he got snatched away from me and the people of my generation. But to know the essence of who Brown was and what he created and instilled inside these people, Freddie, Will, Ryan, Josh, this other fantastic soprano, Courtney Johnson. Like I came in looking for, and I don't think I realized I was until after the fact when I got in college. But seeing, if I'm blunt, these Black figures of just like almost deity-like do what they do and do it so damn well was just it was mind-blowing. And to know we all come from the same place, and to bring it back to Will, to be so gracious. I mean, and even when I went to see him and was on my way to backstage, the fact that I saw our former department chair and Freddie, who's also on the roster of the Met now, and Janae Bridges, and just like all of these people coming to support him, it was just like, wow, what is better than this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a testament to, I mean, if I may make an inference here, it seems like it's a testament to the kind of guy Will is. And I know Will and I were talking earlier that some of the hardest things about this business is learning how to take a compliment and how to be gracious, and have gratitude.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard because you want to tell them everything you did wrong. So I know that Will receives that, and I wonder, Will, Jermaine was telling me just speaking about somebody that sounds like he had a profound effect on both your lives.
Oh yeah.
Who's Mr. Brown? Could you tell me about Mr. Brown?
Mr. Robert Brown. He was.
He's not a larger than life character, is he?
Oh yeah. you and Brown would get along so well, I think. The larger than life character. He was my musical father, as along with a lot of folks who came up through Governor School when he was still there. He was my voice teacher, and also served as the chorus master of the Governor School for a while, and unfortunately he passed away some years back. I think 2008, I want to say. Was that?
Yeah. Oh no, 2009, the summer.
Okay, 2009. But he was someone who I looked at. His African American, got like with gospel roots, but a classical singer, and he always demanded the absolute best from us, and really, really pushed me and a lot of others to, be the best. And he pushed for like strong musicianship and leadership, and he was a great man and a musical father, and so close to a lot of us who were at Governor School when he was there.
Well, guys, I want to thank y'all both for coming on here. I can't. I mean, every time I interview, like I used to have a podcast back in the old days, and
cool.
It wasn't about the same thing as this was. It was a little more kind of shock jockey. But every once in a while, I'll stumble upon one of these kind of moments, and it really, for me, exemplified what is beautiful about this business. The kind of relationships that it fosters. I just don't know if they do this in the accounting world. Maybe, I don't know. But I think that's, these kind of relationships are what makes opera special, and not in the way that people think it does. It's people think that opera is special because it's in this ivory tower, or because it's fancy, or because it's got huge epic forces and it's a great storytelling device. But for me, what makes opera special is the kind of relationship that Jermaine, you have to Will, and that you both have to Dr. Brown. And I hope that in the future, at some point, we can sit down and have a talk about Dr. Brown, because he seems like patient zero for this relationship, and I'd like to explore that a little bit sometime.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I'm down.
All right. Anything you guys want to let us know before we go that we need to know?
I don't think so. Jermaine? Oh, he looked like you're about to say something.
I'm like pondering with my mouth open. I think, Mike, what you said is like so poignant. Every time I see something operatic or choral related, or something pertaining to the classical arts, I'm always looking for that moment where my spirit gets stirred. So I think you mentioning that is very important for people to know. There's a lot of reinvention going on out there with the classical arts, particularly opera. And I'm excited for it because, Will and I, and you too, we're all part of that generation. And I know I have so far to go because I'll never be a Will, but I want to be like the best Jermaine I can be. And I was telling him the other day, I really connect to the choral arts. So I'm wondering where that's going to take me, but opera is who I am, and I'll never stray from that. So anyone who's listening, if you are on the fence about it and you're in your mid-20s and you're not sure, there's so much time.
There's so much time. That's true. And right now that's one thing we have in abundance, ain't it?
Right.
Abundance. Right.